Mike, but I've
Yeah.
had trouble finding time to meet with you.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, and Dunbar and I have communicated, but we haven't met in a drafting form. Um, so I think we're behind on text. In terms of gathering and analyzing data, I've made some progress. I'm about 75% done with data gathering, analyzing that data, predicting the total volume of modules in each year that are expected to be end of life. Um, and It's a pretty complex matter because of the fact that if we just assume that every module lives for 35 years, it wouldn't be a whole lot of math, but there's more of a distribution where some modules are going to die in year one and some are going to die in year 40. And putting together a pretty sophisticated analysis, with a distribution for each year of when the modules for that year are going to come end of life, and then put that in the form of tables and graphs that would be suitable for the report. So that's well along. Text, not so much. And so a lot of the data is going to drive a lot of the text. I mean, the text to some degree is going to be describing what comes out of the data. So it should follow pretty readily once the data is there. And that's where I think Dunbar and I and I'm sorry, what's the
Chris.
first name of the third gentleman?
Chris.
Chris. Yeah, I'm sorry, sorry about that. Yeah, we'll divvy up the work to get it done. But
So
yeah,
Lyle, would you have time Thursday? Thursday's a pretty good day for me. Um,
yeah, it's a crappy day for me. Friday's better if that works for you.
Friday would be good. I've got a couple things to schedule between, but let's do some work together Friday.
Yep. All right, that sounds good. Yeah, and I'll try to get at least an outline of the text by then, and maybe a bit of writing. And I should be done by then with all the data gathering, the analysis, and some of the tables and charts. And so basically, I think the data that we'll be able to present will be an estimate of the total volume in megawatts of modules that will be disposed of at end of life in each year from now out to whatever you think we should go out to, 2035, 2040, 2050. That could be a discussion of how far we want to predict the future. And I can take it out a pretty long way if desired, and then estimated number of modules. And I could also do, and that it's a little bit of guesswork, being a prediction of the future, but estimate the number of modules, and I could also probably estimate the weight, total weight of modules for each year through however long we want to do it. And then also a special analysis on cadmium telluride, total megawatts, predicted end of life, um, predicted number of modules for each year going out.
I just want to add, Lyle, if you know those metrics, Excel can perform those activities for you in a simulation.
Uh-huh. Well,
It's been a long time since I've used that. It's called scenarios in Excel. It's been a long time since I used it, but in a little refresher course that is offered here with us, I could probably look into
uh,
that. And if you know the metrics, if you could give me the percentages and amounts to add into the
yeah.
spreadsheet, it could be a little more solid than just guesswork by allowing Excel to perform the calculations for us.
Yeah, I mean, the guesswork is things like how long will the modules last, and
I
that's
see.
a prediction of the future. So it's not really the sophistication of the analysis. It's just a complete unknown that we can only make an educated guess based on some past history and some knowledge of the science. Um, Similarly, you know, how I can get the reports from the DOE of how many megawatts for each year accurately, but then how many modules is that? You know, we have to assume an average for each year of how big the average module is, and that changes over time. So again, it's a little bit of guesswork, but also knowledge of the industry and what the trends have been in each year. And what the trends will be out into the future, which is just a prediction. So you know what I'm saying? It's kind of it's things that cannot be known. Only make educated guesses based on industry knowledge. So actually, what I could use some help with, if you're good at converting tables into graphs. It's kind of time consuming, so if you want to,
I've done a little bit of that. I'll give a shot for you. Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay. Well, that'll help.
Yeah, I can definitely give it a shot. Send me what you have and I'll work on it. Tell me what you like me to do.
Okay.
Send it to me and I'll do my best.
Oh, well, I appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
All right.
And no pressure, because I can do it too. I'm a little slow at it, but
That's okay. It's my job to free you of that. If I'm able to do it, I'm more than willing to free you of that task, so that you can focus on more heavy stuff. Okay.
All right. You're
All
the
right.
best. Thank you.
And on a positive note, Karen, I see that the utility has been added and we are getting transcribed as we speak.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Isn't that awesome? I'll just have to do a little bit of cleanup on it, but it's doing it for me. Awesome. That's why I keep smiling.
Yeah, we made an attempt for the first meeting to summarize the meeting, and it was good. The summary was good. And the second meeting, it was more technical and more detailed. So we made an attempt at providing like almost like a transcription. And many hours later, we realized that was not a practical approach. And therefore, we have only been posting, or actually requesting the webmaster to post the video, which obviously includes the audio. So, so we would like to have a written transcript. So it seems like that has been activated for this meeting. Okay, and Chris has joined, so I don't know. He was just a few minutes late, so I'm not sure exactly when he came in, but I believe Dunbar and Lyle are planning to get together this Friday to start talking about the text for the description.
Okay. Yeah, I can participate too. If you guys want to coordinate a meeting, I'd be happy to. I think I could help on some of the reasons for end of life that I have some specific data for that are listed in the bullets there. Sorry about that.
All right, so yeah, so that's good. And Joe got off, but I believe he's back on. And
yeah, I'm back on. Thank you, Karen.
He was talking about.
I have. I sent Aisha. I guess I don't know if you got it this morning.
Yes, I have it.
Okay, I sent her a PowerPoint, few slides that address the issues of ownership and possible impact of various forms of ownership on disposal, recycling, whatever. And I'm early in it, but I've done enough research to get a feel for it. Aisha, I don't know, can you maybe put that up on a...
Right now, I'm about to show it to you guys. Just
I'd like to get a lot of input on it, see if I'm heading in the right direction.
Okay.
I also, Karen and group, I reached out for the BPU because they have done a lot of the statistical work on the numbers in the state. And I asked for some backup for the ownership issues. So this is these are the PowerPoint slides. Who owns the panels? And the two sub questions. The next slide, thank you, Aisha. Okay, to me, this would be the universe, and I welcome input. Property owners who purchase the panels, those who have the option to purchase it from the lessor, successors to the property owner, and a lessor retained ownership. Now, successors to property owners, by property owner, I mean residential, commercial, industrial, community, you name it, the universe of potential sites, rooftop, yard, whatever. Next slide. Please jump in if you have any other thoughts on what I'm putting out here. This is from the BPU's charts. This one dealt with third-party ownership versus direct ownership. And if you break out the chart, as I do on the next slide, purchase upon installation roughly represents about 38% of installed capacity in New Jersey as of February this year.
So
Does that make sense, Lyle? I mean, is that?
Yeah, and what I could add to that is that this is a tab on one of the reports that the BPU issues monthly, and typically they're about 2 months behind. Right now, I'm actually looking at one of those, which is the latest one. It goes through the end of July. So that chart that you showed is published every month. So
Okay.
if you wanted to use a more up-to-date one, you can get it off the web. If you just go to NJ Clean Energy, or just Google NJ Clean Energy, and then go to the renewable energy page, and then there's a menu on the left. Well, actually, hell with that. I'll just send it to you.
Okay, that's great.
If I can find your email address, I'll just send that report to you. And it's on a tab called TPO Summary, TPO meaning third-party ownership.
Okay.
So a tab called TPO Summary has that exact table, and that'll give you up through the latest one.
Great.
just to be clear, this is describing people who own the panels outright, essentially. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Got it.
People, meaning broadly, could be municipalities, it could be a company, it could be individuals. Yes.
Yes.
Right. That's the way I understand that chart to be representing.
Yeah. Now, if you wanted to get fancier, there's a separate breakdown on the tab, another tab called Interconnection and Customer Type, and it'll give you how much is government, how much is municipality, how much is schools, how much is farms, et cetera, a whole list. And so if you wanted to break it down more, you could. I don't know if you want to go that far, but
well, that's a monumental task. Trying to keep your eye on the ball, which is what the impact on disposal or recycling is. I'm not sure that that's critical. Whether that issue is as critical, though it probably is, because by user would imply how long it's going to stay in one place and whether there'll be other intervening factors.
Right. Well, and how capable those different types of parties would be of handling the process and handling the cost of doing it.
Right. So the next slide then deals with the more complex breakout. This is what we call third-party ownership, meaning that it's either a lessor or some third party, usually a tax equity owner, and this represents the majority of the installed capacity in New Jersey as of February. 62% with 98,000 installations and kilowatt capacity of about 1.7 million.
Can I ask a question so I could understand something? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, do please.
I noticed that when you guys talk about the panels, you always refer to the kilowatt term. When you use the term the kilowatt total capacity, does that mean like out of all of the solar panels in New Jersey, this is the electrical output of all of them? Like, why do we make that reference to kilowatt rather than like 1,000 modules or 1,000 farms, or like what's the significance of using that term? I'm
Well,
not sure I understand.
yeah, don't mean to break in, but it's because that's what the BPU reports.
Right.
So the volume of modules they're reporting in terms of total kilowatt capacity, not number of modules. Now, there's another report that gives equipment summaries, but broken down a different way. So you like that's what I plan to do in my data is I'm going to get estimates of how kilowatts translates to number of modules and then eventually to pounds of waste.
That's very important, obviously, because
Yeah.
that does relate directly, Aisha, what you're saying, what you're implying.
Yes,
Is
'cause I'm
that,
not understanding the
that,
translation.
yeah, that relates
Yeah.
directly to the issue of disposal, reuse,
Okay.
recycling. Yeah, that's
Okay.
very important, Lyle, that to translate this information into that, that would
Yeah,
make
so I'm
sense.
I'm gonna do my best at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the simple answer, Asia, is that's how the BP reports it.
And,
Okay.
and
Thank
I
you.
mean, part of where this then, staying on that train of thought a second, part of why that's relevant, presumably, is because, 10 or 100 kilowatts of solar panels from 2005 are going to look different in terms of the weight and the waste and the physical material than 100 kilowatts of solar panels for 2020. Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there is year by year data on what equipment was used and how many watts for each panel and stuff like that, then we can make an accurate breakdown of number of modules and pounds of waste for every year. Otherwise, we're going to have to make some assumptions on that if the data is not available in that year by year form. You know, it's definitely true that the amount of waste per kilowatt goes down over time because the modules get more efficient.
Right.
So it takes fewer modules to make up a kilowatt. So we've got to make either find some data or make assumptions on how that efficiency improves and the number of watts per module improves.
And we'll be clear to include that in our report, saying this is based on the assumption that X and Y.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So with the background of the numbers and the percentages and the capacities, we try to look at the impact, and this becomes a little trickier. Next slide, please, Aisha. Okay. The impact, this would be looking at it from the viewpoint of a purchaser of the panels. To allocate the responsibilities, pretty straightforward. When you own it, you bought it and you have it. Repair maintenance should be the owner's responsibility unless he has some type of arrangement with the provider, warranties or things like that, that would allow that to take place. That would be a part of the contract with the installer. Same with upgrade also. This again would be a possibility of a relationship between the owner and the developer as to who would have the responsibilities on upgrading. Sale of the property, when the seller, whoever it is, whether it's a individual or a company or a municipality, sells the property where the panels are installed, that becomes a question of the contract, whether the buyer or seller is going to assume the responsibility for the operation and the maintenance and the ultimate disposal of the panels. Again, unforeseeable events, the owner would be on the line for that. Possibly would be an insurable risk, depends upon what happened and the scope of the policy coverage. But the owner or an insurer would be responsible then for disposing of, if it was required by the event. Again, environmental liability and end-of-life issues would fall to the owner. So it's pretty straightforward when you buy the panels, when you buy the solar arrays, you're on the hook for everything.
Hey,
Next.
Joe,
Does
it's
any
Chris.
of that information change if the companies is a bunch of shells of LLCs and LPs?
Well, now you're getting into very important but difficult to trace or analyze at this level. And that's why I've asked the BPU to provide some background or some information that is that would be the underpinning for their reports. I would assume that in qualifying them for the various incentives that the state offers, that the developers have to document the relationships and the legal interrelationships, and that the BPU should have a fairly comprehensive stockpile of these documents. I certainly don't want to look at all of them, but I'd like to maybe look at some representative ones to see how the various risks are shared or assumed by the
I
different
think that's
parties.
important because it's being used as a method by a lot of LLCs and LPs as a method to escape liability of certain issues that they might normally be held liable for. Is becoming a trend now to form multiple LLCs and LPs to escape liability. So that's important.
That's very important, but the state very wisely in some areas has made as public policy particularly in the environmental areas. For example, landfill closure. You can't escape it by doing that. The state
That's
should be able
awesome.
to pierce the corporate veils or the various entity barriers to get to the ultimate owner. That's an important issue, though, and it's one that should be recognized when we develop policy on this.
Hey, Joe, this is Chris. Sometimes there's an additional layer of an operator thrown into the arrays too. So I don't know if we're so concerned with the operator because that, contracts will vary, I would imagine, between the relationship between owner and operator. But in some cases, that operator may be liable for maintenance, repairs, replacements. So I don't know if that's just something we want to consider.
Yes, I think that's important. I should have probably put that under repair and maintenance because you may have a warranty or some type of a follow-on repair and maintenance contract with an operator. Yeah.
Well, third party owners would almost always have that, but the maintenance operating and maintenance contractor is not going to have a role in liability for end of life.
Right.
It's going to be the owner.
Right.
Yeah. And it almost always is a special purpose entity, at least for commercial projects. Well, residential too, only in batches. And it's not just done for escaping liability. In fact, I don't think it's really done for escaping liability. It's done for business and tax reasons.
That's right. That's right. Which gets to the next. That segues to the next slide, which is a much more complex thing, because as Lyle implied, you have business reasons and tax reasons, and when you lease, when a lease relationship is established, the various elements of responsibility become basically negotiable. But the end of life issue is going to be, to me, a very challenging one, because we're talking long term and we're talking about entities that do shift and do change. And in a project context, for example, a tax equity owner, someone who provides funding for a project. He may represent 25% of the capital cost of developing a project. The rest may be debt financed, but he's going to retain the tax ownership until he obtains the full benefits of investment tax credits and depreciation allowances, usually somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And at that point, he's going to spin it back in the entity, and the owner will be the developer. The developer will then become the majority owner of the asset. That's, again, a complicated issue. It involves sale, leases, leaseback forms, and each one of these carries an allocation of these risks, depending upon the negotiating strength of the parties. I'm sure you have a lot of exposure to this, Lyle. I'd welcome any input you have. Any
Sure.
thoughts?
It's actually, you know, how I do business, because I'm in the commercial field. But
Sure.
in the vast majority of cases, the tax equity owner flips and gives up most or all of its ownership after 5 years, because that's the IRS's clawback period.
Right.
So most of them are structured that way if the ownership flips after 5 years. So tax equity owners would be unlikely to be dealing with large amounts of disposal at end of life for that reason.
Which means, where would it then fall, in your opinion?
Well, it would go back to the initial sponsor equity investor, or as you said, the developer.
Right.
Would own it until it starts to reach end of life.
So
And
that's
they
about as far as
typically-
I've gotten into and analyzing the impacts of ownership. And as I say, I'd like to get some raw data from the BPU to look at some actual contracts and some actual funding portfolios to see how this has been allocated in the real world. I think it would give more substance to the report. It may help. It may have an impact on the policy. I'm not sure, but at least we'll have more real world experience.
Right, I think once you do a full analysis and you see trends that in general they're owned this way and or handled that way, I think delving too deep about some of the outliers can be problematic. So I think this report, as far as making recommendations, really has to talk about the majority of the situations. And we obviously caveat it, not in all cases, but you know, generally this is the situation, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
Because I don't want you to spend a lot of time and spin your wheels trying to capture every scenario, you know.
That was in the details.
But yes, I hear you and I agree. However, you know, perfect is the enemy of the good as well. So we have to strike a balance there. Well, thank you, Joe. That was helpful. And, you know, I like this format in which you presented what you have found so far. The PowerPoint, it inspires discussion, you know what I mean? It's much easier to keep on point and ask specific questions if you have something to look at before you and the rest of the members as well. So I would encourage anybody who, if they want to summarize points, to throw it into a PowerPoint, especially if there are points that you want to solicit input from the rest of the commission members. All right, thanks. Aisha, what's up next? Who's up next?
Okay, next we have Stephanie Lee, current and developing recycling technologies.
Can I share my screen? I think I can.
Certainly. Go ahead and grab control.
Can you see?
Yes.
See my screen? Okay. So I had this section on current and developing recycling technologies, and I looked up the current recycling facilities in the U.S. So I started with the SEIA partners. There's 5 of them. And I went through and tried to identify, you know, where they are and how they process solar cells. So these are the 5 here. And then there are some other facilities that I found, but there's no dedicated solar panel recycling plant in the US. By and large, it relies on electronics recycling plants to process solar panels. So I had found 4 additional ones in addition to the 5 that are part of the SEIA. And so going through their websites, as much information that I can find, it seems like the general strategy is to remove the aluminum frame and the junction box, and then the panel is basically shredded. I saw one company that has a proprietary process to separate the glass from the silicon first, but after shredding, they use a chemical leaching process to remove metals like silver and copper from the shredded material. And then for the most part, the shredded glass and silicon go for low quality applications like road bead, paint fillers, fiberglass. So there's a lot of, I think, missed opportunity or costs that could potentially be recovered. I think we talked about this before, but the separation of the glass and the silicon is the most difficult part. If you're able to detach them, then you could potentially recover silicon as high grade or higher grade material. Right now it's being mixed with glass for the most part, so it's the price is $0.06 per kilogram. So the total cost that you can recover from recycling a solar panel is about $3 per panel, and that does not include shipping and decommissioning costs. So they estimate in this report by the NSF that the cost of recycling is $25 per panel without shipping costs. So if you can selectively remove the silicon from the panels, you could increase the resale price from 6 cents per kilogram to about $5.52 per kilogram for the second grade solar silicon. You need to remove the emitter in the back surface field because these are highly doped and they decrease the silicon quality. And you need to be able to do this gently so that you don't damage the silicon wafer when you're removing the polymer binder. So there are some technologies under being researched in order to remove the EVA binder. Some are chemical treatment, so soaking the panel in these organic solvents to dissolve the binder. The first one in trichloroethylene, it takes, I think, 2 weeks to dissolve. Orthodichlorobenzene, they had to use sonication, so these can be energy intensive and they generate a lot of waste. In thermal treatment, they burn off the EVA at temperatures of 400 degrees C or higher. And at least in one study, they found that they could reuse the silicon wafer. And then I had talked a little bit before about NCP Incorporated that uses a sharp blade heated to 300 C to separate the silicon from the glass. And this last technology, this is again based on heating, but in the absence of oxygen, so pyrolysis. This is a method that they're using in Germany for a recycling pilot plant that they're developing. So in this case, they can remove the EVA pretty cleanly, but it has to be done in the absence of oxygen. Yeah, so that was a summary of what I put together.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was very helpful. Jim, do you have anything to add to or questions for Stephanie?
I would love to get a copy of what you provided.
Aisha, can you translate?
He said he would love to get a copy of what Stephanie just provided.
Okay, sure.
Sure,
Yeah,
I
we'll
can
share
send it out.
everything with everybody.
Yeah, I'll send it in an email.
He
Thank
says
you.
thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or additions, comments?
I just want to point out that that amount to recycle is significantly higher than what Chris told us when he gave us his presentation. When Chris Stearns from CEM was here, DeLubeck, the division of DeLubeck, he said that it was $15 to $18 per module, and that was mostly for the disassembly and the removal of the aluminum frame and the other parts, not including the freight costs and the transport costs. So at $25 a module and only $6 to do that, it's like no just like they said, it's no profit for them. It's costly.
Right, these numbers are not conducive to
Yes.
recycling, you know.
Yeah, so
I
just, sorry.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, yeah, so in this report, this was in 2019, I guess they did several scenarios, and the most cost-effective one was trying to reuse the panels. Recycling was the most expensive out of the three.
So let me add a couple of comments on the different ways of maybe removing silicon wafers and reusing them. As a materials guy, I have a sense that that because silicon wafers are very brittle and they're so well stuck on, it's going to be really tough to remove them and remain with any kind of electrical viability. Also, the layers, we talk about back surface field or contacting layers, those are integral to the wafer. They've been indiffused, and so we can't really take it apart and reuse the silicon fresh.
Yeah, they suggested you can remove them through a hydrofluoric acid etch, which of course is not.
You could do HF etching,
Yeah.
but you would really not.
It's
Very good. The other part,
Yeah.
I think, is that if you were to reuse silicon wafers, you want to make sure that all of the wafers that you would put into a string are identical to each other. And once you disassemble different modules from different manufacturers, you would be very hard pressed to make a new module that had any merit.
Yeah, and I think the at least in this report, which I can send out as well, the scenario that they were looking at is so reusing panels themselves. If you can repair if it's not the silicon panel that has malfunctions, then if it's possible to reuse them, even if they have lower efficiency, maybe they're still viable for some places. And then for the recovering the what do they call it? A certain grade of silicon, it wouldn't be necessarily for solar panels, but they suggested, finding other applications where you could use this high grade silicon for electronics.
Can I ask what might be a stupid question? If you go up to the paragraph above this one you have up, if 59% of the weight is glass, and then it's like 1.8, 0.12, or 2%, 2%, what's the other, I don't know, 30 some odd percent?
Oh, the aluminum frame and the junction box.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I saw that as you were going through, and I was looking at it, I'm like, what could the rest of it be? So I was like, that's not real close to 100. I don't think I'm missing so thank you, appreciate it.
It's dark matter.
Is it possible that we could identify some type of industry that would make use of a solar panel that still has some type of efficiency, even though it's a little bit downgraded? Like, is there some sort of industry that could still make use of this low power available in this panel? Like, could it be used to light up a parking garage at night, or like, some, I don't know, something that's like that need power, but doesn't need like a high rate, or I don't know.
Your best chance of doing that would be reusing the whole module. And of course,
Yes.
that doesn't work if the module's broken. But trying to use a wafer and making a lower power device would be exceedingly difficult and wouldn't compete with new modules, because new modules keep getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And they're down to where they're not that much more costly than just glass with an aluminum frame. The wafers themselves are getting to the point where they're a small part of the cost of the whole solar panel. So, it's difficult for me to foresee any way that you can make a marketable product, by separating the wafers. You might be able to get to the point where you would have a semi-pure silicon source that you would send all the way back to the beginning of the process when silicon is being purified in the first place, and sort of start over with better than raw material kind of stuff. And that might be feasible, but getting a whole wafer out from the plastic that it's embedded in and then getting it into a usable product, I think is pretty much infeasible.
Energy.
But using the whole panel over again, our members of MCA are very interested in that. We have some that are actively trying to do it. For instance, shipping them to underdeveloped countries where rural areas need some power for a school or a clinic or something like that. And there's active efforts to use them in that way.
Or like a
that might be
homeless
more
shelter, something like that. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah, this is David. My understanding is that there is, as you say, Lyle, an effort underway to reuse panels. In the U.S., it seems like it's very limited. It's mostly off-grid type of stuff. And then there is these overseas markets, as you allude to. But I think one of the issues that I guess we're talking about in the solar industry is, reusing a module or refurbishing a module almost always eliminates, destroys the UL certification, which is something I think people really depend on for these installations.
So what does that actually mean? It voids.
You lose
What does
it.
it void?
It voids it. It has to be
That's
recertified.
news to me. Why would reusing it void the UL certification?
I think UL requires them to be recertified if they're going to be refurbished. I don't know about reuse.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the reuse doesn't necessarily include refurbishing. There might be repair, but for the most part, I think you're going to be looking at modules that are viable as is.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, that's probably not a problem. I mean, if you were like replacing the interconnecting cables or something like that, then that will void UL. But they may be able to be used in places where you don't need UL listing, especially if it's overseas. UL listing is useless if it's overseas anyway.
Okay, that's fine. That's where the primary market is for these, is overseas, not here.
Yeah, I think so.
What does
That's
the
truly
UL
off-grid.
certification
Get you.
Why is it
Yeah.
important?
Most code officials want it when they perform the permit approval and the inspection.
As well as I think insurance, the insurance industry.
Yeah. But I think we're talking about the kinds of projects where that might not be essential.
Any other questions, comments for Stephanie?
I was just curious. I know Veolia, I think back in 2018 or so, they cited a facility dedicated to solar panel recycling in Europe. I haven't really tracked the progress of that since inception. I think it was in France, and I don't know. I know there was a significant amount of media attention to it initially, and I think most of the recycling is done via robotics. I know they make glass colored and plastic as the end use for majority of the material. I don't think they do the separation, the alternate separation that Stephanie had mentioned, but I didn't know if anybody on the call here had tracked or taken a current look at the Veolia facility.
Maybe that's something, Stephanie, you could look into to see if it's still operating and still operating as dedicated solar panels.
How do you spell it?
Veolia.
Okay. And this is in France. I guess
Yeah,
there was just one other point that, aside from a cost perspective, from a commodities perspective, I read one report where silver, that we have it's a limited resource. Eventually, we're going to need to be recovering silver from these solar panels. So at some point, it might become cost effective. I don't know what that point is.
Thank you. Chris shared a link about Veolia. Aisha, who's up?
All right. The next section is comparison of current approaches to end-of-life solar panel management. We will be doing New Jersey. Let me share. I'm sorry. Let me just share. Sorry about that. Here we are.
Thank you. So yeah, we haven't actually started this section. We're behind there. How are you doing with Washington, Chris?
So Washington, I did take a look at the bills they passed, and they passed a couple bills beginning in 2017 with the most recent modification in 2021, which unfortunately is delaying their initiation of their stewardship and take-back program, is what the idea behind the bill was. So they're doing more research to understand the different industries and different ownership of the panels before moving forward with the framework of their program. But in essence, they're looking to, from the literature I've read, they're looking to essentially do similar how we do the consumer electronics, the take back program, where there's a cost up front that the purchaser doesn't really see, but manufacturers and distributors of these materials are required to then create a program where it's convenient and at no cost to the consumer of the product, where the take back would be provided at the end of life. So the details are very vague still. There's not a whole lot of information established yet. And I think it looked like the most recent 2021 legislative delay was as a result of, it appeared to be influenced by COVID as well. So I'll continue to track, and I have a write-up I could share with the group at one point too, from what I read.
We have California. We have a very, very short write-up. It's almost like, okay, it's work in progress. We were having trouble connecting with a counterpart in California, but Dan, you found somebody correct for us to try and get more details in California? You are muted. Dan, you're muted. All right, I'm not sure where we stand there. Like I said, we were actively reaching out, having a little bit of trouble finding an individual but eventually we did. So right now our write-up is very, very brief. Sean, do you have anything to report on North Carolina?
North Carolina, I've
Okay.
reached out and haven't heard back from North Carolina on the status of the regulations that they are required to adopt by next year. So that's that. If for Illinois, it's actually the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. They've actually partnered with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, and they just have a working group. And I am also waiting on an update on a white paper that the ISTC indicated that they would be issuing in August, but now it's September. So I'm waiting.
Karen, Dan is back. He was having computer trouble. He's ready to talk about his section when you have a chance.
So Dan, can you remind me of the status of our outreach to California?
Oh, it looked like he might be having trouble again.
Yeah.
Hi, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you, but you're frozen on the screen. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I was trying to unmute myself and it just wouldn't. So yeah, so we had, I'm sorry, am I cutting someone off because I missed?
No, go ahead.
So yeah, so we had emailed back and forth a couple times with people from California and had finally gotten somebody there. And then I was like, hey, like, is it okay if we send some follow-up questions? And that was going on a month ago and they never got back to us. So I'm going to, yeah, like I was just looking for the email. I'm like, yeah, I don't think we ever heard back from them. So I'll email them again and ask them, we had 4 or 5 questions that we were like, hey, can you give us any information? And then nothing. So, but yeah, Karen was very accurate in that, like, sort of the blurb they gave us is like a couple sentences of what they've done, but then not much beyond that. So I'll follow up with them and ask them if they can respond.
Okay, thank you. Seems like a little bit of a theme here. Dave, how about Japan and Europe?
So I had reached out to Evelyn Butler at SIA, who said she was going to help me. I'm still waiting to hear back from her, both on Japan and Europe. I have reached out to my colleagues in Japan, and they did not have much to say, that only that there are no end-of-life management laws in place in Japan right now, and that it's pretty much a market-based situation where owners of panels work with recyclers to recycle them. I don't know that there's going to be much to say about Japan, frankly. I mean, we can certainly say that, but there's probably not going to be much more. And then again, I'm waiting to hear back from Evelyn on Europe. But if she doesn't respond quickly, I guess I need to write something up. And I see there is a lot of information available on the web regarding PV recycling in Europe.
I think we also have some things inside the library on the solar panel recycling page, the library page. I think we might have something on the EU recycling program that Dunbar gave us in our first meeting.
Can I access that?
It should be able to be accessed by anyone.
Okay.
I'll send the link out after the meeting is over.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Again, I was kind of hoping Evelyn would do this for me, but that may not be the case.
Yeah, we have established a web page that has our meeting videos, audio, transcripts, and libraries. So when you guys send us information, something you found that was interesting, something relevant to your section, or just relevant to the topic in general, we post it on our webpage. So then everybody has access to it.
Well, I
And
did
I have
see
a
a,
quick
But the
workaround for
webpage
you
is-
guys. If you want to look for a specific subject matter that was discussed in one of the previous meetings, for our June and our July meeting and the August meeting, there is no meeting summary. But for the first 2 or 3 meetings, there is a meeting summary. So if it's a particular subject matter that you're looking for information that we may have discussed on, if you open up the Word document, put Control F and put in whatever the subject matter you're looking for. You want to look for the EU or European Union, type that in the search box and go to every instance of that throughout the document so that you could pull up whatever was said about that content.
okay.
Excuse me, I had to duck out. What webpage are we talking about?
We're talking about the library page that's used to house all of our meeting stuff.
DEP has established a solar panel commission page, and
Okay.
on that page is just different types of information, including the videos, some transcripts, some summaries, and a library, which includes articles that get forwarded to us or that we find
Okay, thank
that
you.
may be of interest. And Aisha will send a link. So the next couple of sub-bullets here, we didn't assign because we thought we wanted to try and narrow down what our recommendations are and not go into great deal of research and discussion on something that we're not going to recommend. One thing that we are, obviously considering is treating panels as universal waste. DEP had that topic, and we do have a write-up ready to go on that as well. Yes.
I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I just sent some information on some work that's being done at Arizona State University on, I guess, developing a standard for representative samples for TCLP testing for solar panels.
Yeah, thank you for sending that. And yes, I had heard that there was some effort to standardize how these panels are sampled in order to make the hazardous, non-hazardous determination. So we will share our universal waste discussion with the group via email and welcome all comments. Joe, how about the landfill ban?
I'm sorry, I have not done much on it yet, Karen, but I am aware of it and I will dig into it before the next meeting.
Okay.
Same with the mandate.
Okay, very good. Is there any, I know Jim had a topic. So again, these are more conclusion-based sections that did not get assigned because we're going to try and come up with a recommendation or recommendations that we would then evaluate each of these criteria for. Jim, could you chime in?
Yes, I did do the summary that I had submitted previously
Okay.
with the recommendations and potential design.
I'll pull it up.
Okay, great.
I actually think we reviewed this at the last meeting.
We did. I'm going to pull it up just so everybody could remember it. Okay, this is the thing that Jim shared with us in our last meeting that we discussed briefly.
Okay, scroll down. Okay, so it looks like it's basically a recommendation for an EPR with an advanced recovery fee to fund the program.
Right, and the utilization of the approved Class C stuff.
Did you guys get that? He was breaking up a little bit.
Oh. I couldn't hear.
They didn't hear you, Jim. I'm sorry. Jim, could you repeat it?
The other question that's within there is that the utilization of the Class D recycling facilities and that infrastructure. The people that are currently doing electronic recycling could easily pick up the recycling of the solar panels, the management of the process.
So this is definitely one of the options that would be considered. So I was wondering, Jim, if you could kind of flesh this out into more of a more text.
Sure.
And more details, you know. Again, draft your ideas, you know, but I think it would be helpful because this is, you know, one of the very viable options. So if we could go into a more discussion, pros and cons of this kind of approach, and I don't know if you can assign actual dollar amounts. Again, draft your ideas.
You got it.
All right, and the last thing I would ask Aisha to share is that email I sent you with the EPA page that Zafar had sent me.
Yes.
So this is hot off the press. I haven't even looked at it myself, quite frankly. I think it came to me on Friday. But it looks like EPA may have established a solar panel recycling page that has different links and could have, like I said, I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm hoping that it's got some of the data and some of the recent data, making our research a whole lot easier.
Oh, no, not this one. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That is
that's
it.
it.
Sorry, that was it. You guys need me to zoom more? Is this, can you see it?
So it's an EPA circular.
Can you forward that to us?
Sure. Can you forward it to everybody, Aisha?
There you go.
Thank you.
Wow, it says regulations.
Yeah, again, these are, I haven't opened it, but I would imagine they're for hazardous. But maybe it includes other type of information.
Could you quickly just click on that to see? Just give us a sneak peek of.
This
See,
find
actually,
information here.
no, not that one. The end of life solar panels
Okay.
regulations and management. Thank you.
Are you guys seeing the page? Or do
We
I
see the
need to share?
page.
Oh, it
Oh,
didn't come
it's
up.
really bad. Let me zoom in a little bit.
Well, thank you for circulating it. So on this page, you'll find background, types of solar panels, or solar panels, hazardous waste, overview of hazardous waste regulations, state solar panel end of life policies, and additional resources. So that's what that information would be contained on.
What does this
that
do?
page.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. What do you know? Some of the same states we're researching right now.
So yeah, so I'm hoping this is a one-stop shop for some of the questions that we want answered. But like I said, take a look at it, see if it's helpful to you. And I will be doing the same. So. All right, well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for the work you've done so far. And thanking you in advance for your continued attention to this topic. Does anybody have anything else to share with the group?
I might just mention, Karen, that there was an article in the Bloomberg Press a couple of weeks ago about Marubeni Corporation getting involved in setting up a blockchain apparatus. I don't know how to describe it any better than that. A blockchain apparatus on used solar panels.
Okay. Do you have a link that you could send?
I will send Aisha the article, and maybe she can publish it or put it on whatever, you have your webpage or something.
Before I leave work today, I'm going to take a look at the library page and make sure that I put in all of our research documents, and whatever is missing, I'm going to try to get it in there before close of business today. And I'm going to send you all the link before I leave work today so that you could be able to explore the research page.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Aisha, just to be clear, I'm sure you know this, but the draft documents like Jim's document and the documents I sent you, they don't go on the web page because that's public, right? We want to keep our internal drafts.
Yes, I don't put any of that. Only like the articles that we've been sharing, our meeting minutes, agendas, and recordings.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, and this, Lyle, I have a question. At a future meeting, do you think we would have a run through of all the potential and proposed recommendations and a discussion of them?
Yes, right. So I guess my plan, and tell me if you guys have a better idea, is that we would get our sections done, right? We would share them with each other. We would all read them. And then one meeting would be devoted to exactly that. Do we have enough to come up with a recommendation or more recommendations? Are there holes in certain sections that we would need to fill before we were able to do that? But I'm hoping that we get to the point where that's exactly what we do. I was also contacted by our management team with the legislature, and I don't know which legislators, expressing an interest in attending one of the meetings. In fact, they wanted to attend the next meeting, which would have been this meeting. I said, well, I'm not sure this is one you guys want to come to. You know, I mean, this is going to be just a discussion of what the, you know, the status of everybody's sections are. Maybe you would want to come to one where it's more meaningful in that we were be having discussions about actual recommendations. So I'm sure I will have to keep them posted as well. You know what, Aisha, we did have a couple of guest speakers that seem to keep falling through the cracks. They're not.
Yes, two people wanted to bring guest speakers. I believe one of them, Dave wanted to bring someone, and Lyle wanted to bring someone.
Yes.
I think someone wanted someone from BPU. Let me look for those notes.
Yeah, so if we want to follow up on that too, for future meetings, again, I think the more expertise that we can invite in, the better off we will be. I guess back to the question about assembling these sections and then reading each other's and then sitting down for the kind of the hard discussion about what we actually want to put forth as recommendations. Does anybody have a different idea on how to tackle that? Is there another process that you guys think might be more fruitful, or?
That plan sounds good to me.
Okay. And I think it would be really helpful, like if once we all have our sections and each other read sections, to say, oh, yeah, this seems to point me towards this direction, but what about this? And then we can go back to that topic expert, and they may have the answer on their fingertips, or they may need to go back and do a little additional research. So, but without having that, and you have to forgive me, I'm coming in to this as a novice. So without having all of those pieces in place, you guys have a whole lot more experience, or at least many of you do, with the day-to-day associated with this topic. But without having all those pieces in place, I find myself really struggling with thinking, well, this is the way we should go, or that is the way we should go. I am still very much on the learning curve part of this process.
I was just going to ask if, before we go, if we wanted to pick a date. I mean, it looks like for October would either be the 18th or the 25th, probably, if we're shooting for another Monday.
Yeah, and this date and time seems to work well. Is 12:30 better now than 1 o'clock due to class schedules? Or was this time chosen just for September? I'm not sure.
It was because Dunbar needed the start time for his, I believe his classes was earlier this year. So to give him that buffer zone, we started earlier.
Okay, does this still work for you, Dunbar, 12:30 to 2:30? Is that a good time for you? Okay. All right, why don't we shoot for the 18th, 12:30.
Yeah, Dunbar's in the chat right now. I think his mute is malfunctioning. He says his class starts at 3. So
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to give him that buffer zone. Oh gosh, one thing.
What was that date again?
October 18th.
October 18th.
So I guess I will reach out to you guys on before October 4th would be the next time I reach out to Dave and Lau about your speakers. Okay, that's my next day in the office. So I'm going to put that as my first activity when I come in that day, to reach out to you to find out if we're going to have guest speakers Do we want them
Jason,
for the
I've
next
already,
meeting or the meeting after that, or?
I've already recommended 2 guest speakers. One was Michael Harbert, who spoke, and then Evelyn Butler. I'm not sure I got another
Okay,
recommendation.
maybe it wasn't you, Dave. I'm sorry. Where is this notes at?
Back in mine. It'll take me a while to find them, so. Well, we can reach back out once we determine if and who the second person was.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add? All right. Well, thank you all, and look forward to getting the update next month and having some drafts ready to share.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
See
Thanks
you,
for
everyone.
coming.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oops.
Lau, you can send me those spreadsheets whenever you're ready.